Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to our March 2023 Klamath Film meeting. My eCam is once again not cooperating, so just the folks in person can actually see our slides. So sorry for Gary and Nina on the call, and hopefully we get some other people either walking in fashionably late or joining online. We do have some announcements and want to find out if anyone has any projects that they're working on. I've just been doing a lot of video promo work, making a lot of 30-second commercials. But so first of all, oh, that would be my food. Yeah, that'd be great. It's hot wings. Thank you. Appreciate that, Bowen. Our Oscars event was last Saturday. Awesome. Yay. We had about 90 people show up, which was fantastic. Huge turnout, tons of fun. And the crowd favorites for the animated and live action ended up being the ones that won the Oscars on Sunday. So that turned out fantastic. So congratulations to The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse, and An Irish Goodbye. They were our crowd favorites. Surely Klamath Falls had every bit of a bump to kind of get them the actual Academy Awards. Yeah, without a doubt. It was all Klamath that led to that.
We were the X Factor.
Yeah. So there were 5 films in each category. You can't see them, those who are on the video call, and those in here can barely see them on my computer screen. We do have an upcoming event that I wanted to announce. Those of you who are part of our film festival last year, and remember that we had several films associated with Klamath and Modoc tribes. This upcoming March 23rd, they're doing a meeting of the Klamath Historical Society that is going to be focused on the Modoc War. And then on Saturday, they're showing This Is Their Land, Modoc Nation, and one other film that we showed both This Is Their Land and Modoc Nation at our film festival last September, but they're doing it again at the Ross Raglan. I think they're having a panel discussion with that as well about the Modoc War. When we did it, it was the world premiere of This Is Their Land. Yeah. And we had a fantastic panel afterwards, so it should be interesting. I'm planning on going. Hopefully some others can too. So that's Saturday, March 25th at the Ross Raglan. It's a middle of, or maybe that's Saturday, March 25th at 1 o'clock. They're showing the Modoc War documentary, then the narrative short, This Is Their Land, and then Modoc Nation, An Untold Story of Survival. So those last 2 films we had in our film festival. The first one we did not. This Is Their Land, we worked on extensively. That was a narrative short that was actually shot down at the lava beds. That brought in, it was a film crew from a college in LA, along with a bunch of actors from LA as well as Ashland, got together and made a narrative short about the Modoc War. And we helped out with location scouting and equipment and hotels and permits and all kinds of stuff with that film. So
I think you heard them talk about how they helped make these films. Yeah.
Shauna, you're coming in kind of muffled. We couldn't fully understand that.
Oh, I didn't realize I stopped being muted. That's hilarious.
Oh, okay.
Glad I didn't use any bad words or anything.
Welcome, Shauna. Good to see you, and congrats on your Oscar trophies on Saturday.
Oh yeah, I have them prominently displayed.
As you should. Sorry we couldn't get them in for you, but
that's all right. Okay, I'm gonna mute myself again so you don't hear me talking to my husband about dinner.
Appreciate you being here, Shauna. Thank you. So anyway, Saturday, March 25th at the Ross Raglan, screening of several Modoc Wars related films starting at 1 o'clock. Additionally, I know we're working on it. Do we have details finalized yet on our Earth Day screening? Okay. So just kind of save the date. Saturday, April 22nd is Earth Day this year. We're going to try to once again do several Earth Day or environmental film screenings around that time. Our guest tonight is going to be Ross Williams. Ross is no stranger to us. He's had films in Klamath Independent Film Festival multiple times. He's also been part of film crews that have shot out here in Klamath County, including one crew that I was a part of last year. He is co-owner of X-Rats Productions, does a lot of commercial work, does a lot of creatives. He also co-runs the Killer Valley Horror Film Festival, which takes place over in Medford as a horror film festival. His wife, Kristen, had a film in our festival in 2020, Uber Mom. And their son, Ash, actually won our K through 12 Best Film Award in 2021 for his film Burning Up after it was an interpretive dance film of his experience after their home burned down in the Phoenix Ashland fires that happened a couple of years ago. So Ross will be joining us in probably about 20 minutes or so. So first we wanted to go around and give people an opportunity, as we do with every meeting, if there's any announcements or projects people are working on, or they need help with anything that they may have going on, or just general comments on, I don't know, what people thought of the Oscars.
I want to talk about Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso, yeah, episode 1 launched yesterday.
I did enjoy the first episode, if anyone watched Ted Lasso
I
yesterday.
watched it last night.
Yeah. I really loved the interplay of dark and light between Nate's scenes and then them flashing to the good guys scenes where it's all dark in their office and it's all light. It was just fascinating. I absolutely loved it. The music choices were fire emoji. So anyway, I would absolutely recommend Ted Lasso for anyone interested in a study in film. I think that there should be a whole class on Ted Lasso, actually. I'm going to propose that at OIT, and Mark Newport can teach it.
I think Mark will take you up on that offering.
I'm going to email Mark right now.
Right now?
Right now.
Yeah. Fair enough. I liked the Oscars. I think just across the board, I really liked the shorts. I liked all of the short selections, live action or animated. I think they brought a lot of different things, a lot of really interesting contributions. Like I thought that the overall pacing and the artistic direction of the ice climbers or the ice merchants was really fun. I also I think the one, I can't remember, the one about the sailor that gets blown up in the Halifax, the flying sailor. I thought that was really well animated, but also just an incredible depiction of an apparently real historical event, which was very, very interesting because they said in the descriptions and the credits afterwards that it was based off of a real sailor's experience getting blown to Kingdom Come after the Halifax explosion. No, he survived. He lived to tell the tale.
Oh, he flew through the air like 2 kilometers and survived in 1917.
Which was
really fun deep dive.
Yeah. And then of course, Ku Hai Kwan and Brendan Fraser winning their Oscars.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Their speeches were awesome. It honestly, I thought, started out the best with Kwan's speech was like the highlight of the entire Oscars.
Yeah.
Such an energetic, just like wonderful, charismatic human being. And I really appreciated the speeches are the best parts of the
And
Oscars.
I'm so happy to see the quintessence, the culmination of the Renaissance.
Mhm.
Renaissance.
Yes. Or sorry, the
How-
Brendan. It's a play on words
Brendan
for
Fraser goes
Frasers.
from Encino Man and Airheads to being basically blacklisted in Hollywood to then winning an Oscar.
Wow.
Rise. His career arc basically matches the character arc of Bruce Wayne in the Dark Knight trilogy.
Love that.
Don't quote me on that.
Well, we should have a podcast. This is so
We should.
fun.
I
Just
mean,
talk
I have
about-
been. My students have been trying to recruit me to join their radio station.
Oh wow, you're
But-
too high in demand. Dang it.
I hope not.
I see Shauna said in the chat that Ice Merchants was her favorite as well.
And
Let's go against the grain.
I love the catharsis at the end of these merges of seeing
Mhm.
that it's a broken family dynamic and that they were moving
Mhm.
along, but at some point they had to leave that life behind. But they took it in stride,
Woof,
or they, at least literally they took the leap of faith.
woof.
I still love My Year of Dicks the best, but it was close. All of the animated films this year were good. And you can't say that every single year. Sometimes we get some really weird abstract things, but they were all good. But I just thought My Year of Dicks was so entertaining.
It was.
And it had different types of animation thrown in. Each sequence was a slightly different style of animation, which I really enjoyed the variety in it.
I thought the ending was sweet too. It
Mhm.
was unexpected and just a wholesome ending.
Super wholesome.
And I'm all about the wholesome. Gary, Anthony, I know you weren't able to attend, but at least one of the films you can get on Apple TV, which is the best film. The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. So, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. It's just very wholesome.
It is. It's super sweet. It's based off of a children's book.
It is based off of a children's book, but we actually keep it in the fiction section at Canvasback. So philosophical children's depends on how you.
I mean, I would say it is that open-ended, and I'd say there's a lot of room for kids to discover my first philosophy lesson.
I love that. You know, that's another class that can be taught, just The Boy, the Fox, and the Horse. So you know what? We have a lot of different college classes to pitch to OIT.
A lot of things to throw into their humanities department.
Well, speaking of OIT, Mark Newport and I are going to start working on a film, which I'm excited about, on Alex Froome and Malu Froome. They just bought a building and they're trying to get living building certified. And it's kind of a narrative about natural history in the basin and why sustainable communities and sustainable food systems are important. So kind of just different solutions that we have to like climate change and different changes and diversity, and really cool. So a community gathering space. But that'll be like a 3-year project. So nothing happened.
Okay.
I
Yep.
I'm
I
so
actually
sorry.
had
Great to see you,
a
Bowen.
meeting today where I got tasked with making a documentary. So
Nice.
with my job at KCC being a videographer there, we are right on the cusp of grand opening of a building we've had for under construction for about 2 years now. And I've been filming its progress, and they want for our big public grand opening event a 5 to 10 minute documentary about the making of the building and what it means going forward. So that's going to be my big
Nice.
project for the next month or so, is to get that ready before
Well,
our
only a
event.
month. That sounds
Yeah.
intense.
Well, thankfully I've been filming for 2 years for it
Yeah.
anyway. So I just kind of need to do the interviews and then compile all of it. So
Everyone go wish Bowen and good luck at his acting class.
Mhm.
Good luck, Bowen. Thanks for being here.
I'll have fun.
Okay.
Also, I'll follow up with you by reaching out to Darren Foley and the people.
Perfect.
Feel free to beat me over the head with it.
I'll just text you tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
any, before we kind of move on with things, we're waiting for our guest, and also just talking about any projects in general. Gary, I know you can't talk, but I talked with Gary at the last Cameras and Cocktails event in Medford. He's working on a ongoing reality TV show starring Jim Belushi, following around Belushi's path from TV and film into running a weed farm, basically out in the Ashland area. So if you can talk about it, Gary, great. If not, I guess I'll just leave it at that for the description of the show. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name of it, but I know you've been busy for months on set with that program. Nina, how is your, I know you're getting ready to leave for Italy soon with something that's
Yeah, I'm
super
leaving in May.
nice. You want to promote what you're getting to do with that?
So that's my working on getting my PhD in visual arts. So I'm going there to start my residency. So I'll be there for about a little over 2 weeks to start. So it's just going to be a lot of reading, a lot of seminars, a lot of lectures.
That's
'Cause
awesome.
a lot of it's mostly art history.
Yeah,
So-
Nina, do you have like your journey as a filmmaker up to now, and like how you kind of decided that that was something you wanted to pursue as a PhD?
Well, I started with the animation because animation has always been my like big thing. I love creating different things, especially stop motion. So as I've gone through my journey, I got my degree in animation, so I can do that. And then I wanted to do some live action stuff, but I like to do more of like the production design, kind of building sets. So I got my degree in cinematography. And the reason I chose to get my doctorate, like my PhD, is because kind of our history plays a big part in production design and creating feeling and themes and everything, and having a good base and solid understanding of like how art kind of formed and how we got kind of where we are. I think in some ways help shape I don't know, I guess how we shape our movies and what we put into it. So it's kind of why I just pursued it a little bit more. So kind of it's a little bit different of a step, with the PhD because it's more art history based, but it's also focused. I get to focus my dissertation on my choice. So it's going to be, I'm either going to do women in animation and the history that women have like gone through to get where they are, or doing puppetry as well, because puppetry's been around for thousands of years and it's kind of a dying art, but it plays a huge part in history and in film in general, because we all love puppets. I mean, I think most of us grew up on like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Sesame Street, you know, Fraggle Rock, all that stuff. It plays a huge part, and it was a part of history that's how information was passed and stories were passed. So
I don't know if I would say puppetry is a dying art. Like live puppetry, yes, but the popularity in stop motion films in recent years, largely thanks to Leica Studios. But I mean, just last weekend, Pinocchio, which was made in Portland, by the way, won
Yes.
the Oscar for Best Animated Film. And the great popularity of stop motion with like the whole Wallace and Gromit series and all of Leica's films has definitely revived that art that was almost dead for quite a while there. So
the
I'd
puppetry
say
I'm talking more about is like marionettes and wood
Right.
carving puppets. Yeah, that's more of a dying. That's more of what I'm talking about.
right.
Maybe women in puppetry through the film. I don't know how to combine those two, but I don't know. Both are such interesting topics.
Yeah,
You
because
all-
I mean, yeah. Go ahead, Kurt.
Well, I was just going to say, you also just missed out with joining our organization for when we did a screening of Frank and Zed last year. That is a feature length, all puppet film that
Yeah.
if you can find it, you must watch. It is amazing.
Yeah, I think I have that on my list of stuff because I know we talked about it before.
It's not easily accessible. If you can find it, great. You will absolutely love it. But I think Jesse is still in negotiations for distribution on that film.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm working on my music video right now. That's why I have my camera off, because I'm trying to work on some stuff while I'm listening.
Nice, Nina. That's awesome. You're a busy human being. So
Yeah, I have that music video. I have to have it done before I leave in May. So it's
Right.
got to be done and to the studio. So
absolutely. And that's crazy.
And then Anthony, you want to update us on the film that you've been working on or the project you've been working on?
Basically, the research that came through was they prefer that we do not look in that area and do not work in that area.
Disappointing.
It
Yeah.
was a bit to swallow, but I enjoy it because now I get to move on to my other projects.
So then what are the other projects that you're looking at doing?
Right now, I would like to do a documentary on homelessness and how to come up with a positive solution for that.
Okay.
That's awesome. Much needed.
Sure.
Very cool.
Shauna, I don't know if you are a filmmaker or just a film fan, but anything in particular, either projects you have planned or just things you've been enjoying watching or?
Oh, I would say I'm not a filmmaker or I've not been involved in making any films. I just have really started to enjoy watching. I don't know. I've just really started to try and watch a lot of different films and just like we have a subscription to HBO Max, which has a lot of Criterion Collection films, and so I've just been kind of like doing deep dives and anything that looks interesting, and it's just been fun and really exciting, and it's just neat to be around other people that are you know, get dorky and nerdy about film and stuff. I'm really enjoying a lot of foreign films, like older ones, so probably stuff that everybody else has already seen like a million times, but for me it's like, wow, this new age French film is so unique, and I mean it's just been really exciting and fun, so that's why I'm
If you like foreign films, I need to make a recommendation that you check out the entire catalog of Jean-Pierre Jeunet, my all-time favorite director, very biased. Everyone in this country knows him for the film Amelie. But he's got this whole catalog of incredible films, and He's the master of French cinema right now. His films look like nothing else. The cinematography is so unique and iconic. The stories are quirky. He uses a lot of the same actors from every single film. He's done 2 films in English, The Young and Prodigious T.S. Spivet, and randomly he got hired years ago to make one of the Aliens films. But all of his other films, he only makes a film maybe every 5 or 6 years because he's also the screenwriter and works with a crew. But I adore his films, particularly Delicatessen, Amelie, A Very Long Engagement, and Micmacs. Those 4 are masterpieces. I've been wanting for a long time now to have us do a screening of Micmacs because it is one of the funniest films you will see. The cinematography is unlike anything else. The characters are amazing. The acting is amazing. The story is fantastic. If you can find his work, Jeunet is the last name. I cannot recommend enough the films of Jean-Pierre Jeunet.
Thank you for the recommendation. I'm totally gonna explore those.
And
I'm
another
excited just hearing you excited about it.
That's awesome. Another vote of confidence is that my cousin named her daughter after Amelie. So she named her daughter Amelie after the film, which wonderful.
Everyone picked up on Amelie and it got Academy. I think it was nominated. I don't remember if it won Academy Awards or not. And then everyone just kind of forgot about him. But he kept making all these amazing films that get almost 0 distribution in this country. So not a lot of people know about him. But if you know, like how good his films are. Micmacs is, I remember when I was living in Hollywood, there was one theater in all of Los Angeles that was showing Micmacs. And it was the Cinerama Dome. And so I took a date over there, big, massive theater, several hundred seats. And it was, she and I were the only ones in the entire theater watching this film, but it ran for maybe 4 or 5 days before they just cut it completely. But it's so good. It is an absolute masterpiece. If you can find it, you will laugh hysterically and just find the characters so much fun. So Micmacs, Micmacs. We got to do a screening of it at some point. It's so good.
Yes, please do. I would totally be there. I would bring friends. Because that sounds
awesome, Shauna. That's so great.
You are a friend. I'm talking to my husband. He's going, "What about me?" And I'm saying, "You are a friend.
You're my best friend."
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, great discussions.
Yeah. And I see John just joined. Hi, John. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Do you have any sort of projects or anything you want to announce? Or are you still getting your audio set up?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
You know, just fighting the seasonal crap or who knows what. So so nothing fun over here. Sorry.
That's okay. We're happy you joined anyway.
But I still try to. I'm always thinking about my cyberpunk movie I want to do. So I'm always looking at different music and stuff. Stuff I could do in the chair.
I have to say, there's nothing I hate more than picking music for a film. I absolutely hate going through Adobe's music. It actually melts
I'm
my
more
brain.
from a music, background. So that's
I
all I think about.
It's so interesting because I played jazz piano. Like I love music and love what it adds to a film, but going through music, and it's tough, it's Adobe, you pay for the subscription to get whatever. But I just want to shove a pencil in my brain. Like I literally cannot corporate nature I don't want corporate sounding, but I don't want that. And so it's hard.
So today, actually, I got a phone call from Catherine Wilson, who grew up here in Klamath. She founded the Oregon Film Office and has spent more than 50 years working in film all over the state. If you've worked on a film in the state of Oregon, you probably know Catherine already. She called me and we got on that topic because she was looking for a music supervisor. She's working with someone from MTV Films, and she knows my background as a music supervisor for film. and was asking if I wanted to work on something. I said I'm my days in Hollywood are kind of done at this point. That was almost a decade ago. So, but I can certainly talk to folks and provide recommendations. I'm the exact opposite, and I always recommend to filmmakers you start with your audio and you edit to your audio.
I agree, and that's what my pause is.
Right.
Is that I hate finding the music.
The reason for that is that any sort of film that you watch, whether you realize it or not, audio is what sets the emotional tone for whatever emotion you're trying to draw out. Happy, sad, angry, excited, happy. The audio is what largely determines whatever mood you were trying to convey. So nothing can be more powerful in a scene to evoke an emotion than the audio, and nothing can kill a scene faster than having the wrong piece of audio associated with a scene. There's plenty of examples that I could think of, but the one that I always point to is Shrek 2. And what happened with Shrek 1 was DreamWorks had been founded by Steven Spielberg and a couple other film producers, and they started a DreamWorks record label that was part of Universal Music Group that I was at the time. And they used contemporary artists and contemporary music in the animated film, and it matched. It worked great. And DreamWorks as a record label started growing. And so when they started working on Shrek 2, they tried to shoehorn in a bunch of the new artists that had been signed to DreamWorks Records and put songs in as a drive for those bands to become popular. And the songs didn't fit right to match the mood of the scene. And so there's a couple of scenes in there in particular. There's one chase scene that's supposed to be fun and energetic and exciting. And the song, the beats per minute are off, the cadence is off, the mood is off. It's just because they were trying to promote the band. But Shrek 2 tends to be the film that people hate most out of that series of films, because largely the push for not the creative aspect of the film, but trying to launch careers of musicians and shoehorn them into a film where they did not fit, kind of killed the whole film.
Another OIT class to suggest a study in Shrek.
Yeah.
Shrek 1 was
Hey,
good.
I've got a question actually for you.
Yeah.
Can you remind me your name? I'm trying to remember your
Kurt.
name. Kurt. Okay. Kurt. Do you think that's been kind of a trend in filmmaking, on a wide scale? I really no like expertise or objective data or anything, but I feel like I've had this thought many times the past couple of years where I've thought music just doesn't seem to be a part of movies anymore. It doesn't seem to be as, I don't know, maybe that's just nostalgic thinking.
A lot of things are
They were so
upside
much better
down
back in the
nowadays.
day, but-
Let's be honest.
Yeah, there's aspects of that. The idea of a movie soundtrack being like a mega smash thing is kind of going out the door a little bit with the decline in album sales. So there's not quite as much of an emphasis on having a huge smash hit single song that leads off a soundtrack. I mean, think of all the great film soundtracks that everyone had to go out and buy on vinyl or CD or cassette. There's been tons of them, but there haven't been a lot of them lately that were must buys. And that timeline of the lack of soundtracks that you absolutely had to own has declined along with the decline of the music industry, side by side. What's happened instead is now there's more emphasis on going away from the big smash hit single that's going to be always associated with the film, to instead getting back to the creative aspect of what kind of music best matches the mood for the film. And so we're seeing a lot more orchestral films, even films that utilize contemporary music or contemporary artists. They may release soundtracks, but there's not like the must own. So like if you think back to the 90s, like there was a point where everyone had to buy the Singles soundtrack because it had like 7 or 8 amazing songs on it that basically defined the grunge era in early 90s alternative rock. Some soundtracks that were like must own hip hop songs and all that. And the idea of a must own soundtrack doesn't really exist much anymore, as there's not as much of a demand with Spotify and streaming of music for people to own film soundtracks anymore. So
Guardians of the Galaxy.
yeah, the awesome mixtape. Yeah, so it was the Guardians of the Galaxy stuff people did buy. That did really well. But the idea of a soundtrack that's a blend of a bunch of different current artists, and there's one or two big hit, massive smash singles off the soundtrack, so you buy the soundtrack. That doesn't really happen much anymore with films. But at the same time, that gives the film studios a little bit more leniency in the course of the film production as to what they want to license in. They're not being strong-armed as much as it once was to your film has to include this rising star with this song in it. The way that, I mean, think of like how 80s and 90s films in particular, how definitive one song might be. You go further back than that, like you can't think of The Graduate without Mrs. Robinson by Simon and Garfunkel. 80s John Hughes films like Pretty in Pink, you have to think of Psychedelic Furs, Pretty in Pink. I mean, it's the theme song for it, right? A good friend of mine, Jim Walker, did the music for 3 O'Clock High, and the song for 3 O'Clock High plays throughout the entire film. Stuff like that. It still exists to an extent, but it's not as much of a push from the marketing side as it once was. Does that make sense, Shauna?
Good question.
Yeah, I feel like I definitely, if a film does have a really strong soundtrack, whether that's just, background music or like a signature song, I feel like I notice it more because it seems less common now. So like I like kind of perk up and I go, whoa, this has a really good, that's really background music. I feel like it's really adding something. And maybe I took that for granted before. I definitely notice it now. I like this film. I like my respect immediately, goes up for, I'm just like, oh, they really paid attention to the music.
So there's a whole career path called music supervisor, and it's kind of an unknown corner of the industry. That's what I did in Hollywood for many years. Was I was a music supervisor specifically for production libraries. So you could think of it like being a audio librarian, being in charge of hundreds of thousands of recordings of everything you can possibly imagine, of every genre and style and sound effect. And so Fox or Warner Brothers or whoever would call up and say, we're working on this film and it's shot in, I don't know, Central Africa, and we need Zimbabwean folk music with a djembe and this different instrumentation and this beats per minute. And I'd go through the library and say, here's 5 tracks. And if they used them in the film, they pay us a licensing fee. There's about 10 people in the world that do that job as production library music supervisors. It is more common to hire a music supervisor outright for individual films. That's usually one of the names you'll see pop up in the opening credits, the little names that come up as opening scenes are happening. And that person's job is largely not only to find the appropriate music, but also to go through the lengthy paperwork process of licensing all the music that goes in there, and then negotiations back and forth with record labels or coordinating with, music composers if they're doing a orchestral score, stuff like that. It's a very all-encompassing job, and usually a music supervisor will get hired on to do one specific film at a time, if that makes sense. But a lot of people, and especially independent filmmakers, go to the libraries, and there's tons of different libraries. Cassie was talking about Adobe, but the ones that I worked for were called Megatrax and Elias Arts. But there's a bunch of different companies out there that just record music all day and throw everything into this library so that when someone randomly calls and says, I need music that sounds like this, but I can't afford the full artist, or I need this in this style with this beats per minute and this mood.
Is that subscription based?
Yeah, it can either be what's called a needle drop, which is like a one-time use payment, or it can be under contract, where like an ad agency may buy onto a contract and get a certain number of uses throughout the course of a year. It also depends on where it's going. If it's going to be like a web video versus a TV ad versus radio versus a trailer versus a film, what kind of distribution, how many eyeballs are going to be on something, kind of sets the price for it. Some of the lower tier libraries, there's a flat rate. The more premium libraries, like the ones I worked at, it's always variable based on, they want to work with people. But if it's a major national or international film release versus someone doing like a local little indie film, they're not going to charge the indie the same amount as the major studio film.
Hope not. And Ross, I see that you joined. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on where you get your music as well. So thank you so much for being here.
Hey,
Yeah,
Ross.
you're welcome. Hey, how's it going?
Sorry, I went on a diatribe because one of
That's
our
okay. That's okay.
one of our other guests on here asked about music and film, and that was my specialty in Hollywood. So sorry for rambling for about 5 minutes, but hopefully it was educational.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. I've never known. I guess I didn't know that's what you did, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, quick little intro for those who don't know. Ross should be a familiar face. He's had films in the Klamath Independent Film Festival in previous years. He's also a regular on almost every time I'm on a film set. I spot Ross doing something on a film set. He runs X-Rats Productions out in the Ashland Medford area. Also co-runs the Killer Valley Horror Film Festival.
Yep.
And is just actively involved in anything film related in Southern Oregon. So thank you, Ross, for being our guest tonight. This is a very casual Q&A. Also, we should mention your wife, Kristen, had a film in our festival in 2020, and your son won our best K through 12 student film category in 2021.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're a talented family, I guess.
We haven't had a chance to do our introductions yet, and we kind of hold off on that until our guests come in so that you can also meet everyone who's here. So for a quick hello, I'm Kurt Lidke. I'm board chair at Klamath Film. I'm the videographer at Klamath Community College, filmmaker, worked in Hollywood for 12 years before I moved to Southern Oregon, and I'm a commercial drone pilot. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Let's kind of go around and go through our online folks so that Ross can get to know everyone else too. Art, you want to join?
I'm Art Bilski. I'm a nobody and proud of it.
You're somebody, Art. You're a great contributor to Klamath Film. Anthony?
Anthony Lee Thornton, film producer.
Cool. Hey, Ross, so good to see you again. Cassidy here. I am the director of Klamath Film and just happy to be here with everybody tonight. So thanks so much, everyone, for your time.
And looking at our online guests, Gary said he can't chime in via audio. I think he's probably on set right now, but he's listening in. So Gary is, I mean, everyone should know Gary. He's a longtime film producer in the Medford area. He's worked on a ton of documentaries and films. He's currently working on a TV show with Jim Belushi. So thank you, Gary, for being a part of this. If you can chime in, great. If not, 100% understand. Nina, why don't you introduce yourself?
Nina Oberlin. I'm a production designer, filmmaker, and I'm in Lafayette, Oregon, and I'm also a board member with Klamath Film.
Yeah, board member extraordinaire who drove down from Lafayette to come to our Oscar Shorts event this weekend. So we love Nina.
It was a blast.
Yeah. And Shauna, who was also at our Oscar Shorts and won an Oscar for herself this weekend. So two. Yes.
Yeah.
I think you brought home the
Yay.
most trophies of anyone.
What were the categories that, or the questions that you won, Shauna? Do you remember?
It was the number of Oscars won by like the top
Oh,
three
that's right.
time
11,
for-
right?
Yeah, which was hilarious because I had just seen something about that like the day. You know how like just random pieces of trivia will like lodge in your brain
Sure.
for no reason. That one, it was just meant to be. And the other question was, what was Chris Rock going to be?
Oh,
What was going to
was
announce
he-
before he got slapped?
Yeah, and it was documentary.
Yep.
I remember that because I remember thinking, man, that sucks for those guys that were,
It
you know,
really
honor
screwed
and
over the whole Summer of Soul
Absolutely robbed,
film.
yeah.
yeah, like that really sucked for them. Yeah.
So you said earlier you're not a filmmaker, but you're a big film fan, right?
Yeah, I just find myself like really interested. It's like my new special interest. It used to be wildflowers like 5 years ago, and now it's like I want to learn about all these different roles that people play in making films, and it's just fascinating to hear people talk about their thoughts, you know, and the decisions, and yeah, it's just really interesting. And I'm kind of hoping I can like be an extra and just observe, you know, just
sure.
watch and kind of absorb the
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Well, we'll let you know when we
Cool.
have
Yeah.
films coming to town.
dynamics
To be
and
an extra. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah,
Shauna
let me know.
and our environmentalist book club. So we'll have to go on a wildflower hike in the spring, Shauna. So that'll
Yes, please. That would be awesome. Yeah. I mean,
Shauna-
still an interest. It's just like not my special super.
No,
obsessed-
absolutely. You're hyper focused right now.
Being an extra can be one of the easiest jobs in the world. If you can just pretend to be eating a meal and having a silent conversation in the background, you can be an extra. I ended up in 2 major feature films because I randomly walked by on my way to go get food in Hollywood, and they grabbed me and said, "Do you want to stand around for an hour and make $50?" That's how I ended up in John Tucker Must Die and Charlie's Angels Full Throttle.
That's awesome. That's my goal, is just to like be able to say, there I am for 2 seconds.
Just kind of stay. Yeah, just stand in the background and don't look directly into the camera and pretend to be having a conversation with someone. And
I
basically,
feel
you
like
can be an
I do
extra.
that a lot anyway. So like I go to parties and I pretend to have conversations. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. I go to parties and I just
All
like
these
find the cat
conversations.
or the dog in the room and I'm just hanging out with them.
Is it instructions that you?
Yes.
Basic. I was just stand in the background, pretend to eat, and be having a conversation. And don't look towards the camera or the actors. Yeah.
Best way to make $50.
They apparently they had
Yeah,
a
that's my
couple
goal.
of people get sick, and so they were just like pulling people off the sidewalk. And I lived right over by Grandma's Chinese Theater in Hollywood. And I was just walking to go get lunch, and there was a roadblock, and they were filming, and I didn't care because they film in Hollywood all the time. So it's such an annoyance down there. People are sick and tired of film crews, which is fun when a crew comes up here. I'm sure Gary could speak to that if he could speak. That there's still an innocence about film productions and an eagerness about it in the community. Whereas in LA, people are just like, oh God, another one, another detour I have to go around. This is so annoying. I have to move my car and but yeah, sometimes you just randomly get pulled onto a set because they're like, we're short on people. Can you stand in the background and look in, not look interesting enough, just kind of fill space. John, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I just grew up mostly in this area and kind of went to OIT for software and a few other things, and ended up in the IT field. But you know, I always had a musical back. You know, mom always taught music stuff, and so I've always been around music, and kind of decided to kind of join the Klamath Film group here. And of course, Kurt's always getting on us. What have you been doing? And I'm like, hey, not that question again. So I finally decided like if I'm going to make a film, I'd want to make a cyberpunk film, because I always liked, things like Blade Runner or Johnny Mnemonic, all that kind of stuff. So this would be a way to incorporate a whole bunch of interesting things, but it's a pretty ambitious thing. So, it's going to take a while. And of course I got real life in the way a lot of the time, but that's it. That's me.
Yeah. Well, I know Lori has been working on something because she just checked some equipment out. So introduce yourself, Lori, and how all that's been going.
Yeah, I'm Lori. I'm a Klamath Film member volunteer. I started doing a couple short films back in 2020, and I had the puzzle and Squirrely Puzzling at KIF. Squirrely Puzzling was last year, but working on another short stop motion short film right now. And it might also have squirrels and puzzles in it. But very different vibe, in my opinion, from Squirrely Puzzling. So we'll see how it goes.
Awesome, Lori. You're wonderful. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Lori.
So Ross, that is all of us. Let's get to know you a little bit. How'd you end up in film, and tell us about some of your areas of specialty and what you do.
Okay. So I grew up in this area, Northern California, and I don't know, 25 plus years ago now, I moved to Seattle to go to college to do like graphic design, advertising, that kind of work, or schooling, I should say. And while I was there, I kind of was hanging out with all these arty kids and just started getting introduced to all these like wild movies that I'd never seen before. I grew up in the 80s with, the typical like Hollywood fare. And so like I started getting introduced to like, Stanley Kubrick films and, stuff like that. And I just really fell in love with films, you know, and I was kind of getting ready to graduate, and I just was not feeling the advertising, you know, graphic design field, and didn't really want to do that. So ended up getting a job at like a startup internet company, and just, you know, worked there for a while. And eventually I made a friend with a kid who had gone to filmmaking school, and so we started talking about, oh, let's make a film. And like I had this idea for a short film about killer rats. And so we got together, and I wanted to, this was like the very beginning of like digital cameras. Like they had like the high 8 cameras, I think. And you know, all my heroes had made films on Super 8, you know, like Spielberg and guys like that had all made like, you know, Super 8 films. So I was like, oh, I need to make it my Super 8 film. So we shot like a about a 10-minute short horror comedy about killer rats, and it was like silent because there was no sound for Super 8. So we made this film, and I had to learn how to edit it. I think it was on Final Cut 2 at that time. There was like a like kind of a little filmmaking collective up there, kind of like Klamath Film, and somebody was teaching an editing class, so I took an editing class and, you know, put the film together, and it, you know, got into a few festivals and won some awards and stuff. So I like kind of like got off to a good start. And then
How long was it? I mean, minute wise.
it was like about 10 minutes. So it's like buried way deep on my YouTube channel. Like it's probably like 15. Yeah, I posted it pretty much as soon as I figured out what YouTube was, like 15 years ago or something.
What is your YouTube channel?
It's so it's youtube.com/xrats. So, and then I can tell a quick story about how xrats comes about, because everybody always asks
So
about
curious.
that. So I was getting my first email address, and it was like all the stuff, you know, it was like Ross was taken, you know, all these things I was like trying to come up with, and I didn't want to be, you know, Ross, you know, plus 20 different numbers. So like I was a big fan of X-Files at the time, and we had the rats. So we
Oh my gosh.
added them together, X-Rats. And then I don't remember what the
Killer Rats would be an X-File. I can
yeah. So it was kind of fitting. And then so then when we made our first film, I said X-Rats Productions, and then it's just always stuck, and like I can always get it on all the social media and everything. So it's just been helpful.
So it started with an email name. Is that what
so it started with an email name, and then it's just stuck ever since. And then I just kept making little short films. I think I had an idea for like a little commercial next, and made a commercial. I had some friends that were in bands that were wanting like music videos, so I made a couple like, you know, Super 8 music videos, and just was kind of, you know, figuring out the film scene up in Seattle. And then my wife and I had our first kid about 18 years ago, I guess, and decided we wanted to get out of the big city. So we moved down here, and, you know, I started to meet people. I went to work at like an advertising agency in Medford. And then, you know, I met people like Gary Kaut was one of probably the first people in film that I met down here. And, you know, just started volunteering my time just to like get to know people and get on sets, and, you know, just kind of kept working at it. I was making a feature-length documentary about us having our first kid, that was kind of my biggest editing school, because I just spent, you know, a year or two editing this film, like figuring it out. And then And it was also kind of my first real editing sample. Like I gave it to a couple of people that were looking for editors and got some freelance editing jobs, and then just kept, I'd pick up freelance editing jobs here and there. And at the same time, I was kind of a stay-at-home dad. My wife was working full time. And then I just kind of got so busy that my wife wanted to quit her job. And I said, okay, I think I can make a go of it. And, that was probably about 10 years ago. And so I've been doing like freelance editing and film production ever since. And
Wow.
so it's kind of how I got where I am now.
And how did you get involved with the film festival? Like, did you co-found that, or did you just get suckered into having to run it, or?
No, it's funny because that going back to that first film, this film was called Eradicate, about the killer rats. Erat with an R-A-T, Eradicate. And so I don't remember where I saw it, but there was like somebody was putting on a horror film festival locally. And I sent the film in, and I think I was on a trip to like Arizona or something. And I got a call out of the blue, and it was this guy, super deep voice. He was suddenly like, he was like, "Oh, your film won Best Picture at our film festival." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I didn't even know the festival was happening. Like he'd never even like told me the festival was happening or anything. I just suddenly got a call. And so we kept in touch. And then this guy was Randy Granstrom. He's the founder. And I don't know, a few months later, he was trying to put together a little short film. And he asked me if I wanted to help. And I said yes. And I went out and like I don't know if you guys remember Landmine Studio in Medford. It was like this great resource for a while. It's closed now, but they had this huge green screen, and he was shooting there. And I met another guy, Levi Anderson, who I've been longtime friends with and collaborators with.
He's had some films in our festival, so
Yeah. So we work together a lot still. And then so that's how I met Randy. And then like I kind of kept, after that I would go every year to the festival, and it was like maybe 4 or 5 years in, and he was keeping it so like it was only people that basically knew of the festival would enter, because there was no marketing, there was no, it was like all word of mouth. And so there was very few films entered, and like if you entered the film, you got in basically. And I was like, well, there's this, I think I was talking to him, and I was like, well, there's this new thing called Film Freeway, and it's free to sign up, and we can put the festival in there. We can get films from around the world, and start bringing in a little bit of money from the entry fees. And he was like, great, help me set that up. And so then I kind of just became the de facto programmer at that point, because like I just started putting it, like the first year we made the mistake of making it free, and we had like 1,500 entries or something. It was like ridiculous, and like 90% of them weren't horror films. And so it was just wading through all these films that were just entered willy-nilly because they were free festival. So like the next year we made it $10 or something.
That's the primary reason why our festival does have a fee, is
Yeah.
more so as a filter, more so than a fundraiser.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a filter.
I
So,
feel like everybody knows to email us if they like want it to
Right.
just be in and like have a film waiver, and we're like, yeah, absolutely, no problem. So that does definitely help.
Thanks, Anthony.
yeah, I've known that for a while, so I always email you guys, and you guys are always
Yeah, Ross.
So Lori did post in the chat room that she'd wondered if you'd been a rat exterminator turned into a filmmaker, but the backstory makes more sense now.
That's funny.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah,
speaking
no.
of Film Freeway, Ross, do you have anything to submit this year? Are you excited?
Not really. I haven't made a film in a while. I've been working on a lot of TV stuff and just commercial stuff. So I do need to make a new film, but I don't have anything to enter this year.
Well, you did win second place overall in Best Southern Short last year for a documentary about an amazing puppetry group in Southern Oregon called Puppeteers for Fears. I've been trying to help them out a little bit to book a tour in August and trying to see if they can come out to be part of our Comic-Con in July. So thank you for the introduction on that. And also that film was super fun. So
So fun.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
What a cool, like, do you want to talk a little bit about, obviously we went over it at the film festival and stuff, but kind of how you found them and thought, hey, this might be like a really cool documentary.
Sure. So I'd seen their flyer up somewhere, and it was just, I don't remember what show it was. It might have been Cthulhu the musical.
Cthulhu the musical is their big thing. Yeah.
And that just caught my eye because I was like, Cthulhu, I love Cthulhu, but adding in the musical, it was like, what a genius idea. And then it was puppets. So I was like, okay, I'm in. I got to go see this show, and went, and just like, it's totally my sense of humor, just really dark and silly, and with sci-fi and horror, but a little bit of heart too. It's like, there's still like a really good story to all their shows. And so I just went to one of their shows, and then I think that at that point it was kind of like, oh, somebody should make a film about these guys, or somebody should, make some videos with these guys. And so like a couple of years later, maybe, through Killer Valley, I talked to Josh, who's the founder, and he and wanted to see if he wanted to help us make some promos for the film festival, using their puppets. And so we made some of those, and they turned out pretty fun. And then it was a few years later, and it was COVID, and everything was shut down. And there's this website that I work with fairly often called Tongle, and they do a lot of commercial production stuff, and I get in there and get work. And they're trying to build up their YouTube channel, so they were paying people $1,000 if they wanted to make a short documentary about something, and you were supposed to pitch an idea. And so I was like, okay, here's my my chance to make this film. And so I pitched the idea, they accepted it, and so I got in contact with Josh, and we just it kind of came out one day, and he gave me a quick tour of his facility, and I interviewed him, and his girlfriend, I'm blanking on her name right
April.
now, but what's that?
April.
That doesn't sound right, but
Oh. Sorry.
I don't know. It's fine. But anyways, I don't know. So I interviewed the two of them because they were kind of the founders of the group. And they gave me access to, like, here's all our photos, here's all our videos of all our shows. And I just, spent, a couple, weeks kind of editing it together. And yeah, that was how it came together, I guess.
We should confirm, because you did mention $1,000 payout, if you actually got our check from our film festival for your second place finish.
Yeah, I finally did. I don't know why the first time it didn't come through.
I know I had to X out that first check. I have no idea who ended up taking it, but thankfully I'm glad you got it, Ross.
Yeah. So actually made a little bit of money on a short film, which is almost impossible.
Shocking. Yeah, absolutely.
So Lori has a question in our chat, and she's asking, she's curious what your go-to editing techniques are, such as J cuts or L cuts, or any helpful tidbits with editing in general.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I certainly use J cuts and L cuts, and it's all just, I don't know. Editing for me is just a feel at this point. Like, it's just kind of, just whatever feels right. I spend a lot of time with the footage, like for a documentary, I always start with the interviews. I I just kind of like lay all the interviews out in one sequence, and I'll listen to them. The first time through, I just cut out everything that's not useful, basically. Just like all the dead space, all the stumbles, that kind of thing, until it's like just them talking coherently. And then I go back and listen to it again, and I start picking out moments. Oh, this sounds good. This sounds good. And I just kind of like, the way I do it is I just raise it up one level in the sequence, and then like I'll copy that sequence. So I'll listen through to everything. And so maybe I'll, what started out as like 2 hours of interviews, now I suddenly got 15 minutes of highlights. And then I just listen to that again and again and again until like I start seeing the connections with, this statement goes with this statement, and, this is how I want the story to lay out. I usually have a general idea of how I want the story to be laid out, and I'll tailor my questions to that story. So then that's like the very basics of my editing. And then like I'll usually go in and start laying in the B-roll and like finding, clips that kind of help tell that story.
So right as you joined in, Shauna had asked about music in film. And for me personally, I edit to audio. Audio is usually one of the first things that I do, and then put in markers on all the downbeats. And then I'm editing to my audio tracks based on whatever music I want to evoke. So from your editing standpoint, do you put audio first or last in terms of your editing and cutting process?
It depends on the project. Like for a documentary style thing, like I might put a temp track there. Like I use there's a stock website called artlist.io.
Mhm.
That's the one I use the most. And I might put a temp track just to kind of find a pace. But if it's something that's more like a sizzle reel or something like that, where like the music is going to be the driving force of the video, then I'll definitely like try to find the piece of music like up front and start editing it to that. And
Okay.
Interesting. So Ross, what would you use like a sizzle reel for people who don't really know what a sizzle reel might be?
I mean, it's usually a company, they're looking for, a fun 60-second video to like sell a product or whatever, that's usually what I'm kind of editing those for, and it's like very image driven, or, they want some graphics, with the images, and then maybe there's a few, voice, clips or whatever in there too.
So does anyone have questions for Ross? Otherwise, it's Cassidy and I kind of rambling on with our guest. So Nina, Shauna, John, Lori, or Art, if you've got something you want to ask, please chime in.
Well, I just tried to show Art our XRAT's YouTube, and it brought up X-rated YouTube.
That's the one.
So I found XRAT's production for
That or X-ray.
Yeah, that is the one downfall of having the X in the name.
I'm sure.
So where do you get funding, or do you need funding, or how's that work?
Yeah, I mean, I always need funding, but
Where
I
do
mean,
you
most
get
of my usually, like if I'm making a short film, like I've just self-funded them, like I just try to keep the budgets as low as possible. Like a documentary I can pretty much make by myself, so I'm not paying anybody. But I've made like a horror film 4 or 5 years ago that I needed a crew, and I kind of paid a crew of like 4 or 5 people to come out and help me, and I just self-funded it. And I have my own LLC, so I just wrote off all those salaries so I could
I know you also end up on a lot of film crews all around Oregon for sometimes you're sound man, sometimes you're cinematographer, sometimes you're a little bit everything. You and I worked together on a film last year for one of Ray's pet projects where for working good 6 to 8 hours, we both got paid in fried chicken. So, so sometimes it's a matter of just kind of pulling favors for people too.
Yeah, I've worked on a lot of people's sets for free, so like usually I can get I can kind of like ask people to come out and they'll come out for a day, and if you feed people, usually they're happy for a day. Like I wouldn't, like if it was like a 2+ day, like as soon as you're asking for 2 days in a row, it's like that's a tough ask because people have jobs, and it's like, and like I've noticed, like that was the main reason I paid people, was because there's been too many times where like all the films before that I had tried to just do based on favors, and inevitably 3 people would drop out the day of. It was like, oh man. And then I'm like scrambling to like try to find somebody to just hold a boom mic or whatever. And so like I was like, okay, I'm just gonna pay people so they show up and they're reliable that way.
So we do have a question in the chat, although those of you online are also welcome to chime in. You don't have to just post questions in the chat. But Shauna asked, what's the part of filmmaking you love the most and what part do you hate the most?
I mean, the part of filmmaking I love the most is actually the editing, just because that's where, the film all comes together. You can start to see your work all come together, and it's like suddenly working. You're putting a piece of music on and that kind of thing. It's pretty amazing to watch like a rough cut of something that doesn't have any music or any sound effects, and then you add that stuff in and it's like suddenly it's a film. It doesn't. So that part, and then the part I like the least is kind of goes back to that thing I was just saying, where it's like I guess being a producer, like scheduling, finding the crew, that kind of stuff. Like I really don't enjoy that part of it. Like, that's why I work by myself a lot, just because I don't have to rely on anybody else. But
sure. Ross, I want to hear a little bit more about All Across Oregon and the work you do on that. And I know you recently came to Klamath and filmed and what you found here and everything like that.
So I've been working on this show All Across Oregon for the last 2 years. This guy, Vinny DiCostanza, started it. He owns and is the head chef at an Italian restaurant in Medford called Vinny's Italian Kitchen. He just decided he wanted to be like a TV, host or a, and he started this show with another filmmaker, and they worked for 2 or 3 episodes. And I think the workload was just kind of a little too much for this other guy. And I was starting to come in. He was asking me if I wanted to do any editing, and I helped him out with one like segment. And then kind of over the course of the next few episodes, I became like the lead videographer and the lead editor.
Wow.
I work very quickly. So like it just kind of helped the show. And over like it started very much in the style of this other filmmaker, and then over the 2 seasons it's kind of it's kept that same feeling, but it's kind of evolved more towards my style.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, how does the style variation? I mean, I'm just like,
I just think his was a little more like he would do multiple takes, like of like Vinny like walking up to a business, and it was more careful, I guess, in the filming of it. And like when we go, like Levi has become the second cameraman in the last 10-12 episodes. And so we rarely do second takes. Like we're just always on the, on the move, basically. Like as soon as we get to the place, Vinny like says hello, we get people mic'd, and we're off and running, and I'm barely ever, stopping them from talking. It's only if like maybe I'm changing a battery or something, or if I'm pointed in the opposite direction and Vinny says something I really like, and then I look at Levi to see if he got it, and he's like, I didn't get it either. And so we kind of be like, okay, can you ask that question again? Or, like I might prompt him with questions if I can tell like Vinny's like kind of running out of something to say. I might be like, oh, ask him about this or that kind of thing. And then, so it's just very run and gun, and it's very, like, I hate the artificiality of reality TV. So I wanted to like very real, like, and so like in my editing, I like leave in a lot of the, the zoom ins and like camera going out of focus and stuff, just to kind of like make it feel more real.
Yeah.
And it, like, it's not like a food porn show. Like, like we don't have these like long lingering shots of like, plates, we'll get those shots, but it's like, here's, it's kind of more matter of fact, I guess. And then like, it's more about, like, I just think Vinny's really good with people. So it's more about him interacting with these people and like learning their story. So
that's one thing that I don't think people realize enough is the idea of reality TV. When, if you watch the credits, there are casting directors and writers associated with a reality TV. So if the idea of a show is to just simply point a camera and observe what people are doing, why would that need writers and why would that need casting? It means reality TV is not real, folks. Come on. So sorry to disappoint.
Just,
Yeah.
Gasp.
it's
nice. I see a couple of questions here. I can answer those.
They all get like 200,000 a year.
Yeah. Yeah. There are a couple of questions in the chat. So John asked, what kind of pay rate did you offer to make sure that people actually show up on set, which is valid. And Lori just said that Uber Mom was very real and funny, and how was working on that short film with your wife.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, for pay, like, 150 to 200 for a day, we don't.
Pieces of fried chicken.
Yeah, make sure everybody's fed. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't a ton of money, but yeah, $200 a day probably for most everybody, and I'll usually ask and say, how much do you want? And they know I'm self-funding it, that kind of thing. So,
what is the absolute bare minimum that can get you to show up and work for me?
Yeah.
And then
I'll definitely pay more if it's like a commercial project and there's like money behind it. I'd pay more. Yeah.
And then working on Uber Mom, what was that experience like?
So Uber Mom was a fun project. My wife conceived of the story and directed it. She basically based it on her own life. Like she after I took over, this business, and she kind of became the full-time mom, and it was like our kids were, 8 and 12 or something. And so they just, had all these after school activities every day. And it was just like, she would drop them off at school. And then when she would pick them up after school, like from 3 to like 7, she was just running around, running them to all their different activities. They had art and dance and, acrobatics and all these different, piano lessons. And during the day, she was, going to the store and, running all those kind of errands. And so she just, she felt like an Uber driver, she said. And then the Uber Mom came into play, and a friend of ours, Eve Smythe, is in the Amazons, if you've heard of them. She's like a local actress and director of a lot of children's plays and stuff. And so we're good friends with her. And so they kind of came up with this basic outline of what the story would be. And then they got this actress who had taken one of Eve's improv classes, and Eve thought she was really funny. And she was like, okay, let's get her to be the mom. And we just, basically the whole film was improv. Like we were like, okay, we're going to this location. We're just, she just drove our car around. I mounted a GoPro on one of the windows because like we wanted the same angle for the entire film, and we just didn't have like, a camera set up. Like I just didn't want to be setting up a big camera rig. So we just kind of went with a GoPro, and we just drove around, and she improv'd things, and like Eve was throwing out ideas, and Kristen was throwing out ideas, and then it was just kind of up to me to edit it all together to make it, kind of fun and quick paced.
I thought it was a fun film. It definitely made me laugh a few times. So yeah.
That's good. Yeah.
That's awesome. So Ross, I am currently editing like kind of my first short documentary. And so I'm just like curious how you would maybe rank like, I don't know, essentials to filming a documentary, or like what you find really important, what elevates it, because I definitely don't know, like it doesn't necessarily follow a certain story arc, it's just kind of the story about this group of people who are releasing fish into the Klamath, which is a super important story, but maybe it doesn't necessarily follow that specific narrative that most films would follow. So I would love to hear any advice you have for, just kind of making documentary shorts and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, for something like that, I would just, research the subject a little bit, and like, come up with a list of questions, to ask them, and kind of figure out what they're doing, and maybe, onterview them once at the beginning and then once at the end or something, once you've kind of like gone through the process with them, because you'll learn a lot of things while you're out there, and maybe have new questions at the end. And so I think, just crafting questions that are going to tell the story, hopefully. So,
and I found that's definitely what's kind of important with having that B-roll and like that story playing underneath it, and like making sure that kind of like interesting, like, why are you passionate? Like what makes this like gripping to other people and stuff. Now that the dams are coming out, we're doing like a year up follow. So basically exactly a year after I first interviewed people, we're doing another interview. And so it's definitely like a long process for a pretty short film, but like we're excited about it for sure.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, that's always one of my questions is because like I do these kind of like little short documentaries for PBS, and so I usually ask the basic questions, like who are you, what are you doing here, like how long have you been doing this, that kind of thing. And then the passion, like you want to get, because that's usually when they kind of like open up. It's like, why are you doing this? Why is this important to you? That kind of question.
Sure.
Like, and then they're like, oh yeah, okay, I can.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah. So I think that's what makes people interested in watching it too, because you want that connection. You don't just want like information. You want to know why somebody's passionate about what they're doing. Like it can be any subject, really.
So true. It's like a TED Talk if someone was talking about like how fast paint dries on a wall, but if they're so passionate about it, you're like, oh my God, wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I was just gonna say, and then it's just like a matter of getting all the right B-roll, getting
tricky. It's hard. And like as a first time kind of filmmaker, like seeing how things line up and all these intricacies as you're editing in Premiere Pro, and like hearing you talk about editing is like fascinating to me, because I totally want to pull my hair out, and I'm just like not like, it's so hard to find music and make sure that the clips are right. And then you can just like kill a project to death by like
Mhm.
looking at it and thinking, is this even good at this point? Like, what am I even looking at? Like, so it's inspiring to be able to talk to you tonight, because I am definitely at the like just throw me out the window at this point kind of about the editing. So
Yeah, it's always intimidating. I'm always like the most nervous going into like a documentary just because I don't know exactly where it's going.
sure,
Like-
exactly. That's so good to hear, Ross, honestly, because I'm like, how do I even go? How does anyone do that? You know, and it's so fun and exciting. And I do love the story, but it's just like, it is so intimidating. And then like looking at interviews that you've done, and you're like, oh my God, is this audio going to be good? Like, is this footage going to be okay? How do I line these up? It's just like totally intimidating for sure.
Yeah.
The big phrase to always keep in the back of your head is kill your darlings. And Ross knows exactly what I'm talking about, because in the course of a project, you get attached to certain elements and certain things that you are passionate about, but you may realize at the end of the day that they are not necessarily relevant to your cohesive storyline. And you must kill that portion as much as it kills you inside to cut it. If it is not absolutely necessary for the story arc, it has to go.
At this point, I feel like I'm hating everything. I'm like, which one of you are darlings?
Yeah, that's funny because I haven't heard that phrase in a while, but I heard it a lot when I first started filmmaking. Like everybody was like, kill your darlings, kill your darlings. But like, it's just, yeah, I don't know. I guess I just do it naturally now, maybe. And
Yeah. I always equate editing to being like painting, in that in the course of filmmaking, a painter may start with a blank canvas and maybe they do a pencil sketch and then they compile their colors and then they put paint to canvas. It's a multi-stage process. The filmmaking process, you start with maybe your scripting or base idea, and that becomes your pencil sketch. And then at a certain point, you are compiling your color palette, which is actually your filming. The filming is not the creative process. The paint on canvas is where all the creativity finally comes out. And the editing is when you are putting paint to canvas, when you're finally bringing all the elements together and all of that creativity becomes this amazing picture.
Sure. I like it.
We have a couple more questions in the chat. So Nina asked, when you are editing, do you have a goal in mind, or do you just sort of let the footage speak to you as you go through the process?
I would say both. I usually have a goal in mind when I begin. Like there's usually a specific story I want to tell, or, like it needs to be this length. It needs to be, 90 seconds long. So it's like, that's, the goal. And I want to tell this little story in those 90 seconds. And then from there, then I let the footage, speak to me. It's like, what's gonna tell the story that in the most efficient way or the most interesting way, or what's the most fun shot that we can get in there, that kind of thing, the most beautiful shot, that kind of stuff, that just kind of comes in the editing. I mean, editing is just like, it's funny because like editing is basically just rewatching footage over and over and over and over until you just know the footage. Even like, like I'll watch an interview so many times and then like I'll be like, okay, this statement was down here. Like I don't keep notes or anything. Like some editors probably keep very meticulous notes, but I'll just like, no, okay, it's like about here on my timeline. And then I'm just like kind of skipping down there until I find it and then, drag it back to where I want it to be. But yeah, I can drive, like if my wife's in the room while I'm editing, I can drive her nuts just because I'm like rewatching the same 3 seconds over and over and over until it's like just right. Like I'm like adjusting, frame by frame, that kind of thing, or the audio is just not quite lining up or something. So I'm like listening to it over and over again until I get it just right, that kind of thing.
I feel your pain on that totally. Lori also asked, do you have a set time for editing, or how do you forego forever editing for perfection, if you will? Lori, I can answer this. A project is never done. You just run out of time. So
Yeah.
anything you want to add to that, Ross?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on, for a commercial project, I usually have a deadline. So it's just like, I gotta get it done by the deadline. So that's more like I work best with a deadline, because like if I'm working on a personal project, yeah, I will sit with that forever, because it's like I want to get it perfect. And it's like this is the film representation of me or whatever, so it's like I want to get it perfect, but eventually, yeah, you do have to walk away. And it's, it goes a lot to the painting, analogy, where it's like, yeah, it's like an artist knows when to put down the brush or whatever, that kind of thing.
So Art or John or Shauna, you three haven't had much of an opportunity to chime in. Do you have a question for Ross or?
So back to funding. So do you ever crowdsource, or I mean for bigger projects, or you just run them for fun? You do it for pleasure or profit? And YouTube, like how does that work out for you?
I mean, I've only done, I think, crowdfunding once, for a short film I was working on probably a decade ago. And it wasn't that successful. I probably raised like $2,000 or something. And, it was enough to get the film done. But, I mean, I definitely had to put some of my own money into the film as well. And so I really haven't dug into fundraising much. Eventually I'd like to make a feature film, and that will definitely come into play. And so
I do feel like in the Medford filmmaker scene at the Cameras and Cocktails crowd, it's largely almost like a money laundering scheme, because all of the money is just sort of like going in a big circle from everyone's crowdfunded creative project, and everyone helps out on set, gets paid a little bit, and then that money goes right back to the next crowdsource thing.
Yeah.
It just kind of goes in a big loop, just around a big circle.
Yeah, it certainly can. We're all kind of helping each other out.
John or Shauna, you two haven't had a chance to chime in much. Do you have a question for Ross or something you want to chime in with? Yeah, Shauna.
I have a question. Ross, what is like a film that you're really excited about? Like you think everybody needs to go see?
Ooh, good question.
Moment in time, what are you like most jazzed about?
That's coming out, or
Not necessarily. It could be yours, but it could. I mean, it could be something coming out, or it could be something that's already out, and you're just like, everybody needs to see this.
Well, it's funny because now I think it's completely overhyped, but I loved Everything Everywhere All at Once.
I was hoping
that was by far my favorite movie of the year. Like that movie, I didn't like. It had been years since I was blown away by a film, and that one blew me away. And
okay,
I get the detractors, like it's not a film for everybody, for sure. It's like very, single-minded, very weird. And so, but
yeah, the hot dog finger world is where my girlfriend kind of lost, like what exactly is going on here. But yeah, it has abstract elements to it, but it's definitely worth a watch if you're willing to. It's one of those films where if you're willing to go along for the ride and just accept whatever's happening, you can enjoy it. If you try to stop and analyze, you get lost with, wait, what the hell is this? I felt like the same way happened with Inception. Like you just accept it and just roll with it, and just whatever they're telling you, believe, and you'll follow. If you try to stop and say, wait, why is this happening with this and that? You'll be like, you lost me. Sorry.
I still don't even know Everything Everywhere All at Once is about. And so Ross, you saying that has solidified. I'm going to go home tonight and I'm going to say to my husband that we're sitting down and we were watching this film. And
I mean, ultimately it's a film about family and like, and kind of like following your heart, it's like, it's got all these insanely wacky things happening all around to make it fun. But like when you're like at the end, like I think I cried the first time I saw it because like the mother and the daughter relationship was so sweet. And the husband and wife relationship was so, well
Okay.
done. And like, so
All right. So would you use the adjective wholesome to describe this film?
If you could describe a wholesome kung fu movie that has Matrix elements, like if your mom ended up in the Matrix,
Sure.
that basically would describe everything everywhere all at once. Like how would your mom react
She would not
to,
do Matrix.
to be
Tough cookie, but I think she would be quite confused. So, but that sounds awesome. Okay, well, wholesome is pretty much my like guiding force when I'm looking for films.
yeah, like the core of it is wholesome, but there's definitely some scenes that aren't so wholesome.
So it's fascinating because like horror has never been a genre that I ever thought that I would like watch until kind of becoming a member in Klamath Film and talking with Frank and Zed produced, Jesse and everything like that. And I'm like, okay, maybe I can expand my horizons. But when it comes down to it, the core of me needs a wholesome content.
And I'm trying to think of a wholesome horror movie.
Yeah, I know. Well, Frank and Zed's pretty close. Like,
yeah
the
it
Babadook, maybe.
Yeah.
That's a mother-son relationship.
Shaun of the Dead with the friendship between
yeah.
Simon Pegg. Yeah.
Oh, there's that one where they're the zombie like boyfriend girlfriend and they're
yes.
kind
Well,
of that one wasn't too bad.
Warm Bodies.
Bodies.
Yeah.
Warm
yeah.
Bodies,
Warm Bodies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. That's a good one.
I feel like the movie Phantom Thread is a little bit of a horror film.
in
How
a
about
very
Tucker and
abstract
Hale
way.
versus Evil.
I mean, it's not like dressed like a horror film, but there's definitely like these really horrible
Horror.
dynamics between this guy
Wait.
and his wife. Like it goes dark. Like you do not expect it to go dark, but it gets really dark.
Nina chimed in with Tucker and Dale versus Evil, which is another great one of a good like friendship wholesome movie of like some backcountry rednecks that just happen to be thrown into the zombie apocalypse, but it's still about some good wholesome friendship there. So
It's about being in the wrong place with just happen to meeting the wrong people, and there's no killer.
Yeah, I love that film because it's like there's no killer. It's like the kids are all accidentally killing themselves.
It's just random.
Yeah, it's very fun film. I love that one. Yeah, horror comedy is probably like my favorite genre, but it's also like a very difficult genre. There's very few films that pull it off.
Okay, so horror comedy, Ross. What would you recommend to someone who cannot do horror films? Well, okay, no. You know what? Take that stipulation out. What would you recommend to someone as your favorite horror comedy film? Like one that just epitomizes what you love about that genre.
Horror comedy, probably Return of the Living Dead.
okay.
Return of the Living.
I would say the Evil Dead original trilogy, Sam Raimi. I grew up on Army of Darkness repeatedly, over and over again. Army of Darkness before I realized that it was actually the third film in the Evil Dead series. But
Well, my son's name is Ash.
yeah. So Evil Dead 2 or Army of Darkness are great comedy. Or Shaun of the Dead is also Shaun of the Dead is fantastic.
Yeah, those are all very good. Yeah, they're all zombie movies basically. But Cabin in the Woods is really fun. That's a good one.
Oh, that one.
It's like-
I watched that in high school. I'm pretty sure I watched that one in high school. That killed me.
I know we're talking about film, but honestly, what's that TV show?
The Last of Us? No,
No.
that one's
It's
not
like
funny.
it's like workplace horror.
Oh, workplace horror.
Why am I blanking on it?
So, are you talking about Severance?
Severance.
Yes.
Severance. Yeah.
Severance, so yeah. I loved that.
I like
It's very
realistic.
quirky, very weird. Everyone's stuck in an office and they've basically been lobotomized and they have no idea of their outside world outside of the office. So they have two lives. So when they go home, like their brain flips to just their outside world. So they have like an outside person and an inside person for whether they're on the clock or not.
So That's what I always thought about dreams. Like when you go to sleep, like, are you actually just a different person in a different universe? Who knows?
Great actors, but very, very weird show. It's on Apple TV, but I would recommend it. I don't know if you've had a chance to see that, Ross.
Yeah, I really love that one. That was probably one of my favorite shows of the last few years.
That's
Ross-
Severance
Yeah.
on Apple.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's on Apple. Ross, did you see Ted Lasso?
Yes, I've seen
you
that.
watch-
Talk about wholesome there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very wholesome show.
Going into an in-depth discussion about the themes of last night's episode and the dark and light and the interplay and, you know, film studies, really.
See, I have a friend who's like a mega soccer fan, and he can't stand that show because he's like it's a show about a soccer coach where there's no soccer. I can't watch this because there's not enough soccer in the show.
Fair. You should watch Welcome to Wrexham.
Yeah, and so I told him he should watch Welcome to Wrexham instead.
That's a great documentary. Well, fun discussions, people. I am excited about Everything Everywhere All at Once. I will get back to you, Ross, on we'll watch it tonight.
Yeah, let me know.
Yeah,
I know,
I bet you'll cry, Cassie. It's got some
I'm
real
positive I will cry, Shauna. I am ready
Yeah.
to be heard again.
You
so.
Before you watch it, you should cook up some bagels first.
Bagels?
Yes, may like toast some bagels.
Bagels
to
is a
be
good idea.
part of the film.
Wait, oh, that's so funny.
And
because I
and
made the
maybe
mistake
like some hot dogs too. Some bagels and hot dogs.
last night.
It is a
Boss.
wonderful movie. It is a very good movie.
I love matching food to film.
Mhm.
Like if we're watching Bob's Burgers, I'm like, Tommy, do we go get burgers from down the street? Like I think it's really important how food.
Eat an everything bagel.
Okay.
And if you want to, grill up a hot dog, that would also be a good choice.
It's okay. Man. We have to wait until I go get an everything bagel. Like I'm in what I'm watching. Awesome.
Does anyone else have questions for Ross while we're here? Anything further, or Ross, do you want to tell us maybe about some of your upcoming projects?
Oh, well, this
John,
is a mundane question, but just what video editing software do you prefer at this point?
I mean, I use Premiere because, it's kind of what I fell into. I came over from Final Cut when they made the switch to Final Cut X, and then, I just kind of get stuck in that world, and I use, After Effects and Photoshop and all those. So like, it's just handy. I've been hearing a lot of people talking about, what's the black magic one? The
DaVinci.
DaVinci. Yeah, like
DaVinci.
I've used it a little bit, and it seems very, very similar. They're all kind of pretty close to each other now. I mean, Final Cut X is kind of the odd one out, but
DaVinci is a great editing program. It's one of my favorites.
yeah.
I use DaVinci when I'm converting footage. So like Klamath Film has a couple of Blackmagic cameras in our collection. So if I check those out and use them for anything specifically, I'll for color palette purposes, because DaVinci I found is actually the best of all the softwares for color correction. That's kind of its niche. The best color correction tools are on there. So I'll convert it within DaVinci, maybe do color correction, and then export it out into. See, I'm the opposite of you. I learned a little bit on Adobe Premiere, hated it, and went to Final Cut and never went back. I love Final Cut. And so I'll convert everything in DaVinci to Final Cut.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Ross, hearing you talk about editing, I mean, we've kind of been throwing around the idea at Klamath Film of doing like workshops and stuff. So would you be interested in teaching like if we get funding or something like that, doing like an editing workshop for people coming down?
Yeah, we could potentially do that. Yeah.
Could be cool. Would love to hear your thoughts on it. Siri's interested
Yeah.
too.
And it sounds like I need to do a music workshop at some point too.
Oh, yeah,
So
for sure. Ross, did you say which music you use? Did I miss that?
Artlist.io.
Artlist.io. Okay. And do you find that works well with like documentary, like anything you're looking for there?
Yeah, they have like they have a huge
Yeah.
collection. So
What do you type in? Because I'm like typing in like nature, like I don't know what to search for.
That music is a very difficult, like that's always the thing I'm kind of struggling with towards the end of a project. yeah, I just try to like find, like I think about what genre, what speed, like that's the nice thing about this one. You can like kind of, it has like different things you can search by. You can search by
Sure.
documentary, and you can like pick
Okay.
fast, slow, it like gives you like a beats per minute even.
Gotcha.
And then like, it brings up a big list, and then I'm sitting there for, an hour just like listening to samples.
Oh my gosh,
and,
I
like,
know, and I'm dead.
I download a few, and like, I'll put it under my footage and be like, yeah, that's not the right one. And then, so it is kind of, it can be a very
Tell me
kind
about
of
it.
hairy pulling
So
experience.
to follow up with Lori, it is artlist, list.io. So there's hundreds of production libraries out there in various tiers. And if you are a low budget or no budget filmmaker, what you want to do is just do a Google search for what are called royalty free music libraries. And these are places where you can do what's called a needle drop, which is a one-time use, or you can do a contract buy-in to be able to access their entire library for the purposes of your project, and the music is fully licensable. If you're going through totally free libraries, you're sometimes very limited in terms of the music that comes prepackaged sometimes with Final Cut or other softwares or Adobe. There's hundreds of libraries out there. There's definitely the top tier ones that the professionals use. That would be like FirstCom, Megatracks, Elias Arts, Extreme Music, APM Music, Jingle Punks. If you watch a lot of films in the credits, sometimes you'll see those names pop up a lot. But there's hundreds of lower tier libraries down to people who have just made music in their bedroom, and they're like, here's tracks you can download if you want to make a film. So if you want to dig, that's great. Music supervisors these days, particularly music supervisors for production libraries, which is the work that I did, think of them almost like audio concierges. So like you struggling to find the right piece of music, or Ross struggling to find the right piece of music, my job in Hollywood was that you would call me or email me, say, here's a rough cut, or here's what I'm working on. I need something that fits this mood. And lots of times, filmmakers don't necessarily know musical terminology. And so I thought I was kind of like a translator, where I would take what I thought the director or ad agency is trying to hear in their head and describe to me, and say, oh, we need this instrumentation and this beats per minute with this genre and this mood. Sounds like maybe this artist, and this artist's song, to either be custom made or pull music out of our library if it was available. I remember times like I had one director call me once, and he was really struggling to describe what he was hearing in his head for this commercial that he was working on. Eventually he said, I need something that sounds yellow. And I had to try to figure out, what does yellow sound like? What is this person hearing in their head that they think is yellow audio? And so sometimes, and I'm sure Ross, you've run into this with films where you hear something in your head that would be like, oh man, that would be perfect to match this footage. But what the hell am I hearing, and how do I find it?
Yeah, I mean that's that's often what I'm doing. That's often what I'm doing when I'm searching through those, those websites. Like I have a certain idea of a song that I want to hear, and then it's
so
Lori,
Cassidy, you may not know, but Klamath Film bought a lifetime subscription to a music library that you have access to, that you need to be using. So audio with 2eyes.com, you have full access to. So if Adobe is not working for you, we have a login. So use our little account sheet, and you have full access to audio with 2eyes.com.
That is fun to know. Indeed. Audio. Well, so Ross, do you find like inspiration from other like documentary films that you're like kind of trying to match their style and like see what music they're doing? Or like, I don't know. I feel like I've been watching a lot of fish films.
I don't really watch a lot of documentaries, to be honest.
Honestly, so many documentarians say that. Like, I get it.
Right.
I don't know, because like so many of them are depressing, but I don't know. I mean, like I guess I watch like a lot of Netflix documentaries and that kind of stuff. Not, and a lot of like YouTube shorts, that kind of stuff. And I mean, sometimes I'll, if I'm looking for inspiration, I might go there, or that kind of thing. Like often if I'm struggling for a set of questions to ask, I might go watch something in the similar vein and be like, okay, what question prompted that answer? That kind of thing, like kind of reverse engineering it. But yeah, it's funny. I don't watch a lot of documentaries.
Good to know. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for your I appreciate it.
So we got about 10 minutes left. And with our meetings, what we always do is give everyone who is part of the meeting a chance for either a last quick question or just final thoughts that they wanted to share. So let's go around. Art, do you have anything that you want to chime in with? Well, okay. Well, thank you for being a part of the meeting as always. Thanks for coming out. Appreciate it, Art. Lori, any final thoughts, or do you have a final question that you want to ask Ross?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate Ross, you joining, and it's been really fun listening to you and learning more, especially about editing. I was particularly interested in learning more. I don't have a final question, but just sort of a comment. While you were talking, because you do a lot of documentaries and horror, and I apologize, I don't think any of your films are about this, but it sort of came to mind that it could potentially be fun to do shooting a film about making a documentary, but making it horror. Just throwing that out there.
So like a mockumentary where there's like all sorts of crazy, scary things that happen behind the set.
That'd be hilarious.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Just throwing that out there.
There was for some reason I can never remember the name of this film, but there was a very well done mockumentary where they're following a serial killer. Like he's like kind of like a Jason, Freddy type killer, and they're following him for this film. And like it's funny because it's like showing all the behind the scenes of like, oh, here's where I make the cat jump out, here's where I they're running this way, I take this shortcut here and get in front of them, that kind of stuff. So it was like this really funny like behind the scenes look at like a movie serial killer, and then at the end like the movie flips and it becomes like a serial killer film, and he kills off the documentary crew.
There was a popular 80s slasher film that was like that. That was like a parody of the whole genre. I'm blanking on the name of it right now, but when the 80s slashers were kind of at their peak, there was a film kind of spoofing the whole genre that was like that.
And I haven't seen this show, but it sounds like What We Do in the Shadows with the
Mhm.
vampire.
Yeah, what we do in the shadows.
Yeah.
Fantastic film,
Oh.
decent TV show, but it started as a film first.
Okay.
That's a amazing film, incredible cast. Jermaine Clement's in it from Flight of the Conchords. God, who else? A couple of actors where you know the face, but you don't necessarily know the name.
Oh,
But
gotcha, yeah.
super funny film, very funny film. John, do you have a final question or any final thoughts for our meeting?
No, just thank you so much for coming. Everything you said was enlightening. So, it's hard to think of what else to ask at this point. But because we covered so much territory, and
We did,
and it was,
yeah.
and it was. I think we've had a good run. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Nina, do you have a final question or final thoughts you want to share?
I don't have a final question or anything. I just want to say thanks for sharing your story, and I really appreciated your film in the last Klamath film with the puppets. I'm a huge fan of puppetry, so it was great to see something promoting puppetry and people that are trying to keep it alive.
Yeah, it's kind of a dying art form, sadly. Like there's very few people that do it. But it's funny to see like, Muppet style puppets like getting into, R-rated situations.
Yeah, Ross, before you joined, Nina was sharing a little bit about her PhD journey and how she's thinking about doing it, and specifically in the history of puppetry and film and everything. So talked a little bit about the dying art form and everything. So it's a fun overlap here for sure.
Very cool.
It was also fun to run into Ross at, I think it was the January or February Cameras and Cocktails in Medford, and told him, congrats on taking second place and winning stuff. And he was like, wait, I won? Wait. And I was like, yeah, did you not get your check? What?
No.
Notes for next year: A, priority mail with tracking, and
Right.
B, also just following up with the filmmakers to make sure that
they actually know, hey, you won a thing, congratulations.
Yeah.
That's what you get
I
for
wish I
not.
could have.
Yeah, that's what you get for not attending in person, I guess.
I know. I was really bummed I couldn't make it because that's always like one of the most fun parts of making a film is like getting to see it with an audience. So like, and especially that one because it's, I feel like there's a lot of laughs in there.
And then Shauna, as our newest person to join our meeting, you get last word here. Do you have a question still for Ross, or anything you want to say before we depart?
I was just gonna say I learned 4 new filmmaking terms today, so
Yeah.
very productive evening. So I learned about J cuts, L cut. Wait, am I saying that right? J cuts, L cut, sizzle reels, and B roll.
That's awesome, Shauna.
Yep.
I was like Googling a lot while you guys are talking. So yeah, thank you for the knowledge. And I was curious, did you watch the Oscar nominated short films, Ross?
No, I haven't seen
Okay,
those.
I was just gonna ask your opinion.
We did a screening last weekend. We have a tradition here with Klamath Film, Ross, where the day before the Oscars, we do a special showcase of all of the live action and animated short films. And we always do like a little Oscars trivia thing with it. And Shauna was our top award winner in the trivia for that. So
Crushed it.
That's very cool. You show the documentary shorts too, or
if we don't, because if we included the documentary, it'd be like 6 or 7 hours of film footage in a single day, and that's a lot to take in for people. It's already long, like 3 to 4 hours of film with just animated and live action. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
I know we considered doing it because I was really interested this year. I was like, maybe we could do it like an afternoon, like all the retirees might want to come out and watch the documentary side, but it is hard venue finding and hours and everything like that. But yeah, Ross, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate your presence and your energy and all your knowledge and letting me pick your brain with, obtuse documentary questions and everything. So it's great. Really appreciate
Yeah,
your
I
work.
mean, feel free to email me if you have more questions. and-
Awesome. I'll just send you it and just be like, please tear it apart. Let me know what I can do better. And always appreciate your knowledge.
Yeah, I can give notes if you'd
Thank
like.
you. Awesome.
and then Ross, we always give our featured guest last word. If you have any bits of advice or recommendations for seasoned filmmakers or first timers or just film fans that are thinking about dabbling, if there's anything you want to say, the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I tell sometimes I get invited to, classrooms or something, and I tell people to make something, now that we have this like, amazing film making device right here, with your phone, like you can get, 90% of the way there just with your phone, and, just find like something you can make a film about, like your cat, or, some interesting piece of art you have in your house, or, something. Just like I tell people to just make a little 1-minute film about something, like their mom, whatever, like, and just see how it works, like see what shots you need to get to tell the story, see what, questions you need to ask, or that kind of stuff. So that's usually my little piece of advice, is just try to make a little 1-minute documentary about something you find interesting.
That's so fun. It makes me feel like we should have a quick fire, like
Mhm.
Klamath Film in the film festival. Like, here are 10 1-minute films, like just ready to learn about something someone finds interesting. So that's awesome, Ross.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming out tonight, being a part of our March member meeting. Thank you, Ross, for taking the time out to talk to us. Fun conversation as always. I'm sure I'll see you at the next Cameras and Cocktails, wherever that may be. They haven't announced the location yet. Don't forget about the MODOK Wars film screenings that are happening at the Ross Ragland on Saturday, March 25th, starting at 1 o'clock. 2 of the 3 films they're showing were part of our film festival last year. Our next event, aside from next third Thursday in April, us doing our next April member meeting, will be a screening on or near Earth Day of environmental issue films. So we will have more information for that coming soon. And our submission window is open. So if you are a filmmaker or if you know someone who is, please remind them that you have until June 1st to submit a film for the 2023 Klamath Independent Film Festival. Any final words, Cassidy?
Nope. Thank you so much, everybody. So appreciate it as always.
Thanks everyone for being here. Have a wonderful evening. Shauna, go watch a film by Jean-Pierre Jeunet.
Oh yeah, good
Bye.
advice.
Yeah, I
City of
I
Lost
was just
Children.
looking up Micmacs.
yeah, Micmacs.
No, no.
Micmacs is my
Lost
favorite. A very long engagement is a great one. It's about World War One. Delicatessen is a fantastic film. It's really whatever Jean-Pierre Jeunet film may actually be on a streaming service right now because they're kind of hard to find. But if you can find them, they are worth the search.
What did you say was your favorite, Ross?
I'd say City of Lost Children is my
City
favorite.
of Lost Children is a very, very good one as well.
Yeah.
All of his films have a very unique art style. If you've seen one, you immediately recognize, did Jean-Pierre Jeunet make this? If you start watching something, because nothing looks like a Jean-Pierre Jeunet film except for one of his films.
I'm
And-
on it. I will, next meeting, I will report back with my
Yeah, I have homework.
opinion. Yes.
Yeah, Amelie
good
is my
homework.
wife's all-time favorite film. So
Yeah, Amelie is amazing, and the lead actress in that, Audrey Tautou, appears in most of Jean-Pierre Jeunet's films, along with an actor, Dominic Padrone, who has been in every single one of his films.
I know I could just talk about films for another 6 hours. Don't get me started.
That's my all-time favorite director, so I'm biased. I was giving Shauna recommendations before you joined.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
an
but-
amazing
yeah,
director.
he's a
His
fun-
work is good.
Yeah, he's really fun.
Well, thank you, everyone. We will do this again third Thursday of April from 6 to 8 p.m. Thank you for being a part of this.
Awesome. See
All right,
y'all.
thank you.
Have a good night.
Thanks.